Welcome. Today is a segment of Berkshire Education Now. It is April 5th, 2020, and this production is being created to highlight education and its impact in Berkshire County. Today's segment focuses on higher education, and we are thrilled and honored to have our distinguished guests with us today. I will be doing some introductions. My name is Andrea Wadsworth. I am a school committee member, and I work within the K-12 system. And I'm going to hand this off to my co-host, Quinn Burnell, and he will take it from there.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Quinn Burnell, and I'm a junior at Lee Middle and High School. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. So we're just going to go through and do a couple introductions and kind of set the pace for today's interview. We'll start off with President Kennedy.
Hi, I'm Ellen Kennedy. I'm the president of Berkshire Community College. We are one of 15 public community colleges in Massachusetts. We have about 1,600 students taking anywhere from 1 credit to 21 credits in a given semester. We, although it is considered an associate's degree, is thought of as a 2-year degree, it can take students anywhere from 2 to 40 years to actually complete their degree. We have people who come directly from high school, people who return to work during a work transition, people who transfer to us to complete a degree, or people who want to change professions. So that's really a broad look at what a community college is.
Great, thank you so much. President Burge?
Well, good afternoon. My name is Jamie Burge. I'm the president of Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. We're located in North Adams, Massachusetts. We have about 1,500 full-time enrolled students, a fairly traditional 4-year liberal arts education. We are the state's designated public education, one of about 29 around the country. So we're excited to represent not just Massachusetts and the state universities, but also public liberal arts institutions.
Thank you, President Burge. It's an honor to be with you here today. And President Mandel?
Hi, everyone. This is Maud Mandel. I am the president of Williams College, which is a private 4-year liberal arts institution in Williamstown. And we have just over 2,000 undergraduate students from all over the world and 2 small graduate programs, one in the Center for Development Economics and another in the graduate art program for students pursuing masters in the arts.
Thank you, President Mandel. And Mr. Keiterling?
I'm Elias Keiterling. I'm a student at Berkshire Community College, Mrs. Kennedy's college, if you could put it that way. I guess I'm here to provide a more student-centric perspective of what everyone's going to be saying. So.
Right, thank you. Thank you all for being with us here today. We really, really appreciate your time. So we're just going to start with our first question, which is, what are your general thoughts on the COVID-19 crisis, the overall impact, and your initial reaction at the beginning of all of this? How did you, really come to formulate your plan? President Kennedy, would you start us off?
Thank you. I think we would all attest that this has been a huge disruptor to all of our lives at every level, and it's clearly been a disruptor to higher education. I think at first we were trying to find ways to ensure our students could continue to do their face-to-face classes on our campus, but we wanted to have a plan in place that, should that not happen, we could deal with it. So we extended our March break for our students, but our faculty worked really hard to try to figure out how they could make sure students could complete their education in the semester. So we've spent the early part of this trying to figure out 2 things. One, how we would provide a safe learning environment for our students, and 2, how we would provide those students in a different way if we needed to move to remote education and remote work.
Thank you. President Burge?
Yeah, similarly, I think that when the reality of COVID-19 became more and more prevalent, I think a lot of us, our first thoughts were, how do we make sure that our colleagues at the institution, our students and their families were staying safe, and what could we do to limit exposure to the virus? As a public institution, similar to what Ellen was saying, There are certain directions or directives we take from state government, the governor, the Mass Department of Public Health, the Department of Higher Education. And so very quickly, the 9 state universities worked with one another and the governor's office to talk about what would it look like if, in fact, rather quickly, and we needed to respond in a way that is unusual. And so I think from our perspective, we did that very well. We, just as COVID-19 was emerging, we were about to enter our spring break. We very quickly added a week of break time. We canceled classes for the second week. That week allowed us to do a couple of things. One was to bring our faculty in for professional development training on various technology platforms, anticipating that we'd be going to a remote learning environment, which we did, of course. And then it also allowed us to have more time to clean facilities with our facilities colleagues, to do a deep cleaning, as many people talk about it, so that if and when students and colleagues came back, it'd be a place that was clean, certainly. So I think all of those things have kind of challenged how colleges normally operate. And I have to say that I've just been absolutely proud of the way that people at MCLA have worked to try and accommodate this new reality and still maintain a good quality public liberal arts education for our students.
Thank you so much. And President Mandel, what are your thoughts?
Well, this has obviously been a tremendously disruptive and painful period for the entire world, actually. And all of us are experiencing it in our own ways. I think in residential colleges where students had anticipated spending the semester, the shock of the rapidly evolving events that took place in early March were really disconcerting and upsetting. And I think my own relationship to that experience was, we were following COVID very closely starting in January, and it was already affecting our international students and students that particularly were coming back from Asia after a long winter break. And so we were very in close communication with them and with our community about it at that time. And I think well into late February, our thinking was to, in fact, try to keep everybody on campus as much as possible. So spring break was coming, and we were thinking, what are we going to do to try to discourage people from leaving? So we were really encouraging people to change their plans and stay local, a lot of encouraging emails and messages around that. And it was really a pretty rapid turn of thinking in early March as we started to track the news and other institutions of higher education, particularly institutions that have large science facilities. And we started to follow the science of what we were hearing from, of course, Europe and other countries where this was happening. And quickly realized that a residential college was going to be very challenging to keep safe on the one hand, but also secondarily, that in some ways we posed a really big risk to the community because we had a lot of people, and if they were to become ill, they would quickly use up resources that would mean that people who were much more compromised by illness, potentially people over the age of 80, people who were immunocompromised, that we would be a disproportionately heavy impact on the community. So the combination of those two facts, our impact and our ability to keep our community safe, meant that we did a pretty rapid change of direction that was very upsetting. I think people didn't expect it and were shocked and upset. But once we made the decision, I have to say, and I just want to echo something that Jamie said, the degree to which the community has rallied, both to make a switch to remote learning, which is really not a thing we were doing at Williams at all. And the faculty have spent all of their spring break gearing up to prepare, and the extended spring break, like MCLA, really used the time to educate themselves on how to do this well. Our students, have migrated to all corners of the globe and tried to do their very best under very, very challenging circumstances. And the degree to which staff stepped up to help operationalize this tremendous and rapid change of direction was really moving, actually. So I'm very grateful to everybody on the campus and off who helped support this.
I want to a little bit off of what Maud had said. Ellen and I were talking earlier today, and You know, it's amazing to me, you know, in higher education, we kind of fall into our lanes, right? We all kind of know what our lives are like and the work that we have to do. And when we get pulled out of that lane, like, for example, with COVID-19, and we have to think differently about the work that we do, but still have our sights set on the outcomes that we've always wanted for our students. To do that work differently is tremendously tiring. Ellen and I were talking earlier today that, you know, the life of a college president is frenetic at best. And we're always traveling, we're always in meetings, we're trying to be problem solving. And from that, there's an energy that comes for us individually, and it kind of compels us to do our work. For the last 4 weeks, and I'm speaking for both Maud and Ellen as well, and correct me if I'm wrong, our lives are really this right here, what we're doing. We're having Zoom meetings or Skype meetings, and or being on the phone or emailing people more than we usually would, and we don't get that generative energy from the interaction with people. And so I was saying to Ellen, I felt better about her describing how tired she is at the end of the day. So I was thinking, you know, I've worked 8:30 to 5 the last week or so, which is one of the shortest days that I've ever worked. But I'm really tired, and I couldn't figure out why I was so tired. But it is about trying to maintain the same outcomes, but doing things very differently that can drain energy. So, you know, when I think about our faculty who are trying to teach in a different environment, when I think about our facility staff who are trying to clean while maintaining social distance, moving students out of the residence halls in a rather rapid fashion, and having the staff maintain that social distance, it's remarkable and tiring at the same time. So it's really a very different reality for college presidents these days.
Yes, well, thank you for your time. We really do appreciate it. We do see that, you know, you guys are really putting in your 100%. We appreciate all that you do for, you know, not only your students, but for our community. I had realized, President Mandel, that you had mentioned that not only you were taking into account your student body, but you were taking into account the community. And I think that's a really admirable thing that I wanted to mention, that, you know, you were really looking at seeing the, you know, the community and understanding that there are people who are immunocompromised and people who are, you know, in the target kind of age group that really were in danger, and you kind of understood that and took the precautionary steps, you know, personally and through your student body, to really protect them. And I thank you for that. Mr. Keiterling?
Yeah, as a student of actually one of the colleges here, but as a student in general, I'd like to echo what Quinn said, and thank you guys all for keeping generally the student body well informed. It's very, very helpful. With the outbreak that happened very, very quickly, course of 3 months, the primary problem that myself and other students that I know was, how are we going to get exams? How are we going to do homework? It was primarily assignments. We all knew classwork could be done. We've been doing Skype since we were, you know, 10. So far that's been going very, very well. Some small technical issues can be expected, but still, we don't. Not many of us don't have a definitive answer on how finals are going to take place. From the email that I have, which was sent out March 13th, which is, I believe, the day that they extended spring break and then ultimately canceled. Canceled is a bad word for that, but from that email, final schedule is how it stands. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I just kind of want to know an opinion on that.
Hi, Elias. I'll jump in as you're our students and
Alrighty.
talk a little bit about that. I would say that we're trying to provide as much sort of control, so to speak, a sense of control over how this process is moving forward. So we have, in all the decisions that we've made, and I am sure President Mandel and President Burge would say the same thing, we've all put the student at the center of this. How do we ensure our students are supported, our students have the resources they would have if they were on our campus now that they're not? And how do we provide the educational outcomes that the student came to us when they started the spring semester, expecting that they would have achieved when they get to the end of the semester. So this is an iterative effort. I think our faculty are finding, just as you're finding ways and challenges and things about yourself and the way you learn, our faculty are finding out those same things about how they teach and how they learn, because they're in a process of learning new ways to share their passion with you as a student. So every faculty member on our campus was asked to develop a plan that worked best for them and for the students that they were teaching. So every single plan is very different. Some are completely utilizing online resources. Some might be sending things in the mail and sending assignments. And some may be doing conference calls. Many might be using Zoom or Moodle. So we're looking at this as a broad scale approach to how do we help every student be successful. And we know that some of our students, we don't know where we're going yet with social distancing and how soon things might move back into a face-to-face opportunity. But we know that we want to make sure that our students are prepared by the time the end of what would normally be our semester arrives, so that if they have other things that were caught up in this process of completing the semester to move on to, those things can still happen. We're also having every student work individually with their faculty member as they encounter issues, concerns, struggles, timing that's not working, needing additional assignment. I think one thing that we all have grown so accustomed to and we didn't mention is that for many of us, people are in households and sharing an internet service. So you might have multiple people trying to work remotely. You have parents trying to figure out how to do homeschooling with their students as they connect. And Quinn, you described that really starts for you on Monday. And then we have people who are doing remote learning. So we're trying to work in an environment that is both asynchronous, which is what we're doing now. We're recording something that we'll put up and people will watch it at their leisure later on or when they have time. And a few of our faculty are doing synchronous learning, where the students are showing up live and in person at the time of their class through some kind of technology. So I think we're trying to do lots of different ways to make it work for each individual student, and each individual student might be doing it in a very different way with every faculty member. I hope that helps a little bit about how we've approached it. It might be different at the other two institutions.
It does help a great deal. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all for your thoughtful responses to that question. We're going to move on to our second question. Would you mind just communicating what has been happening behind the scenes and your educational plans going forward? What are some of your plans and that you have in place or you are developing for the future? We'll start off with President Kennedy.
Well, I just spoke a lot about that, so I won't use too much time on that. I would say beyond that, we've worked hard to keep all of our employees tightly connected in this process. So we've done things like having an almost daily Zoom town hall meeting for all of our faculty and staff, and we've had between 120 and 130 people attend. I share whatever updates I have, and then people can ask all the questions. The session goes on as long as people do that. So that's a little bit of the behind the scenes. We also have a Dean of Teaching and Learning Innovation, Lauren Goodman, and she has a team that includes instructional designers. And we are working, those are the people who are working probably most closely with our faculty on how to move into this very different teaching environment.
Great, thank you so much. President Burge?
Yeah, this has been incredibly challenging to think about, again, as I said, to maintain the outcomes that we want for our students, but to do it in a different way. A few things that we've done, we've engaged our faculty governance process because there are some policies that are guided by or implemented by faculty governance. And we've asked them to look at a couple of different things that might make it a little easier for students. And so, for example, we recently passed a policy change for this semester at least, where students can elect to rather than get a grade for their course, they could get a pass-fail assessment. So similar to what I think Elias's question is, how are we trying to accommodate a different environment that many people didn't anticipate? One way is that we'll let students elect to that pass-fail. The reason we're making it optional is that there are some students, we have many students, similar to Williams, we have many students that go on to grad school or to medical school, some of whom have not yet accepted or been willing to accept pass-fail grades in courses that are required. And so we're allowing our students to choose whether they want to do that or not. But for students who feel like it may have been more of a struggle for them to study, we're allowing them to have that pass-fail. Like what Berkshire Community College has done through these daily town hall meetings, we've primarily relied on written communications to faculty, staff, students, and families as well. We try to get materials out Mondays and Thursdays of the week, announcing any updates that we have, reinforcing resources that people have access to online for information about COVID-19 or policies that we have. I think we're probably going to go to some kind of town hall meeting, electronic town hall meeting for employees in the near future, primarily because I think people want to be able to see each other. But again, I will say that I've been just remarkably impressed by my colleagues and the things that they've done out of the ordinary in order to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish.
Thank you. President Mandel?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there are some really profound similarities to all schools trying to figure out how to transition from forms of learning that were not traditionally remote to remote learning. So I think there's a lot of similarities. One difference I think that's notable, perhaps because of very different student bodies and where they're from, is Williams opted to go to what we call universal pass-fail, which means that all classes at Williams are going to be awarded either a pass or a fail, but they're not, and therefore are not being calculated to GPA. And part of the reason for that decision was that we have students all over the world, many of whom had to go home, many who don't have access to internet or have spotty electricity, say, in their countries, family circumstances that are exceptionally diverse. So the ability to be successful in a class really, which is very, if you think about a regular semester, much more similar to one another, because everybody on a campus of my kind of institution is more or less living a similar life. Not exactly, I don't want to overstate the similarities even then, but still there is a certain consistency that the professor can expect and assume of the learning experience. But right now, that's really disrupted from the student side. It's also disrupted from the faculty side. And I think one of the things we were thinking about when we made this decision is we didn't know the extent of COVID-19 itself. To what extent would students and faculty potentially get ill, have to take care of ill relatives? We really just had a sense that this was an unprecedented moment and that it would never be looked at as like any other semester. So when students applied for graduate school and the like, people were always going to be saying, well, spring 2020, that was not like any other time. And so that we had some flexibility to think creatively about how to think about course evaluation in that context. I will say it wasn't 100% popular. I think there were students advocating very heavily for it and others who weren't, which I totally understand, actually. And it's one of the things, we remain a multi-vocal community. People have strong points of view. And people have been very generous in understanding that we have to make hard decisions right now. We just made another really hard one, which is we canceled commencement and reunions for this June. Very emotionally challenging decision, very upsetting for many people. I think many knew it was coming, but that doesn't mean it was happy news. So we're trying, and Quinn, in answer to your question, to do as much outreach as we can when it's feasible and possible to get input. So for example, on the commencement decision, we've now surveyed all our seniors to ask them, given this cancellation, what might feel like a satisfying way to mark this tremendous milestone in their lives in the future. And so folks are right now filling out those questionnaires and sending them back to us, and we'll make some decisions about that later. But I think it gets to something I believe Jamie Burge was saying about the iterative, or maybe President Kennedy used this phrase of the iterative process in which we're all making these decisions. We're trying to be as thoughtful as possible, as I noted earlier, follow the science as best we can, but there's a lot of things we don't know yet. And it means you can only go so far in your decision making. So we're now transitioning to think about the summer. But I know many institutions, I assume the two others represented here, certainly at Williams, we've started to think about the fall. But at this point, I would say I have more questions than answers about how to even think about that problem right now.
Thank you. And Mr. Kiterling, we're going to use your time on this question just to ask you a little bit about how your transition has been into remote learning instead of, in person.
Right. Well, for lack of a better word, it's been jarring. I went to BCC right out of high school, so I've always, in some capacity, had in-person learning. I've always had a professor or a teacher over my shoulder to understand, calculus, to understand trigonometry, to understand third grade math, stuff like that. So to not have that extra resource, it's hard to adapt to. I seem to be taking to it well, thank. But there are some people who can't, learn without a physical demonstration. Specifically for labs, there are some people who can't learn without having a professor do it 5-6 times in front of them, and so that's one of the problems that really can't be helped until we can get back face to face. It's just something you have to live with, and then the workload changes, but it doesn't get any greater or lesser. It just changes when you have to do it and due dates, and so that's just jarring, really. It's hard to adapt to.
Thank you. And I know President Mandel, you've already touched on this a little bit, but I'd like to just ask President Kennedy and President Burge about your plans for seniors and graduations and kind of things coming up for the end of this semester and for this summer. What do you just touch on that, President Kennedy?
Sure. I think all of us would say what an important moment in the life of a college student commencement is, and it's equally an important moment for our faculty and for all the people who are part of the family, the extended family, our community, our faculty and our staff who played some role in supporting that student, and to not have the physical manifestation of that celebration, that acknowledgement is a difficult thing. So we have not officially postponed our commencement yet. We're actually, though, obviously working on a plan B and a plan C and a plan D. And similar to President Mandel, we'll be surveying our students this week to see how they want to see this milestone honored in their life. So we're hard at it. We had been honestly spending all of our time and energies on making sure that last Monday got off on the right foot, that our students were taken care of and supported. And now we've got people working behind the scenes to figure the rest of this out.
President Burge?
Yeah, we're all institutions of rituals. We love academic rituals, and I think they're important expressions of history, of our traditions, of what it means to honor people who've made accomplishments. And as Ellen said, it's not just about students, it's about faculty. Faculty have major accomplishments at commencement as well because they've educated our students so well. So we revel in those rituals, right? And so the idea of not holding them is difficult. We have postponed commencement this year. It was scheduled for May 16th. We've not set a date. We've committed to having a ceremony. We don't know when it will be or what it will look like, but I've shared with students and their families that we will gather and honor the students for the work that they've done and the faculty for the work that they've done. But we just don't know yet what that's going to look like or when it will be. We're actually reaching out to senior class officers later this week or next week to start engaging them in a conversation about what that would look like for them. How would they like us to honor the accomplishments they've made? But that's probably one of the more difficult things as I think about what we do differently, is that we're losing the opportunity to really acknowledge one another, to honor them for the things that they've done. And I think that's one of the saddest elements of this virus, aside from the health concerns and the risks and vulnerability of people who contract the illness. One of the other things that's really sad about it is not being able to acknowledge each other. I've tried to avoid this idea of phenomenon of social distancing. It's really physical distancing, and I worry that if we think about the social distance, that socially we're not staying connected to each other. what impacts that has for us once we're past this. Because I think it's important for us as a society to stay connected, as families, as friends, as colleagues, to stay connected. And it's through that academic ritual that allows us to honor that. And so I'm hoping that we'll be able to facilitate some kind of ceremony for our students who are graduating.
Right. Well, I just wanted to say that I think I really appreciate, and I think that it's very important to take into account, you know, the social aspects, and that it really is an emotional thing for a lot of people, and that it's, you know, commendable that you are really dedicated to making sure that people feel, you know, acknowledged and feel that they really did have their full higher educational experience. President Mandel, did you have anything that you wanted to add on?
You know, I'm really, again, just echoing my colleagues here, but I think, you know, it is such a tremendous accomplishment for so many students. And commencement is not just actually a time for them, it is an amazing time for them, but it's also their families who, you know, have supported them, sometimes through pretty significant hardship, often at exorbitant cost. So I think there are, you know, many reasons why one wants to celebrate this moment. It's a turning point in the life of the academic journey of a student, but also the end of, for many, not all, but for many, the end of formal education, actually, which, you know, they've been doing their entire lives and their families have been supporting them in. And so it's just it's a momentous time. And I think you hear in the things that President Burge was saying, just the way I think we all take it very seriously and feel some pain over all of these decisions we find ourselves forced to be making, and trying to figure out alternatives that will be equally meaningful. One of the things, just a little anecdote for your listeners that's interesting at Williams, is that we have also, in addition to commencement, we have major reunions of alumni classes in the summer. And the class that was celebrating its 50th this year, actually, due to historic events in 1970, did not have a commencement on campus. So there's something about this, this sort of milestone moment on a 50-year horizon, which has been very challenging, at least at Williams. But it is, so you can imagine now they've had their 50th reunion postponed as well. So quite an experience for the class of 1970.
Wow. And Mr. Cutterling, what are your thoughts on commencement and spring kind of academics and kind of plans like that?
Well, I'm very, very lucky. I'm only in my second semester of ECC, so it's not something not something I have to worry about specifically with the COVID-19. But you know, my heart goes out to people who may not be able to have that, because I do understand for some people that is a very, very proud time for them. And as I believe someone said, maybe President Kennedy, it does signify the end of formal education. And that's a big deal. You know, I've been in formal education for 14 years now, and that's most of my life. And other people my age will be seeing that as the same way. So it you know, not much else can be said, but, you know, my heart goes out to them.
Well, thank you all for your time. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Wadsworth for our kind of ending of our interview today. But I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate you guys spending your afternoon with us and really taking time to educate the community about what's happening.
Thank you, Quinn.
Thank you,
Quinn.
Thank you, Quinn. I'd like to add a few comments. So regards to testing, Elias, we have that same question coming up in K through 12, you know, what's happening with MCAS? And to the credit of the people who are trying to deal with rolling out these changes, is it literally is happening moment by moment. The anticipation, like, you can't anticipate what's going to happen because they literally don't know until the directive comes down. So we're fielding that on our end, and I appreciate that question, because I didn't even think about, I was hoping no one had to take a final. That would be good. Just check it off. I'm a product of going into education later in life, so online learning has been very easy for me. as an adult. So when this happened, I was shocked as at the high school level, we weren't ready to put a platform up. Like we just didn't transition our students. And so it was interesting at the college level, you had that infrastructure behind you, but you still had a lot of details because it wasn't everybody, and you moved everybody. So, kudos, because that's a heavy lift. And so I appreciate that, all three of you presidents. And I would like just to end with one final question. And because online communications, these Zooms are all new to us, I like to ask everyone where they are, because I always find this interesting. So I'm in the corner of my living room, and sometimes my husband walks by and says, "What are you doing?" So I'm in this little nook. And so Quinn, where are you?
I am in front of my one blank bedroom wall.
President Burge?
I'm in my home office in a house in New Hampshire that we have.
Wonderful. President Mandel?
I'm actually, after 2 weeks of self-quarantining in my house in Williamstown, I've come to my mother's house in New Jersey. So this is in fact her office in my childhood home. And I'm trying to help with some familial issues from here for a few days.
Wonderful. President Kennedy?
I'm in my home office and adapting to a very different way of work.
Yes, and your background is super cool. Elias, where are you?
I am in my library at my house in Lee.
That's awesome. I want a library like that. That is very,
Thank you.
it looks awesome from a backdrop. I would like to extend my gratitude to the three presidents of the colleges. You are our leaders. You're shaping the minds and the future leaders of our community. And what you're doing we are eternally grateful. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time out of your super busy schedules for meeting with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Very much.
And Elias, it was great.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate
Good
it.
luck.
It was good to see everybody too.
Yes, Jamie, it was great to see face to face.
Nice to see my living room, Andrea.
Yeah, it's yellow. Well, wonderful. This ends our segment on higher education. I will hope that you let us circle back to you in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, to see how you're all doing.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Stay
Excellent.
healthy, everyone.
You well. Bye-bye. Thanks again.
Thank you.